Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I have a tutorial on what I made for my Halloween costume this year. This is heavily inspired by something that Jordan Hanz made for Halloween last year. I'll link her video down below. She makes lots of videos every Halloween. They're pretty badass. So here's my Halloween costume this year. It's a gory mask full of organs and cool stuff like that. So if you want to see how I made it, keep on watching. The first organ that I started off with was a brain on this thin part of the mask. To do that, I just took a thin layer of clay and used some tweezers because I don't have fancy sculpting tools to carve out those bulbous shapes that are in brains. And you really want to use reference photos for everything. I was looking at photos of real organs the whole time making this mask so that everything could be as realistic as possible. The next organ I sculpted was some intestine going right down the middle of the mask. So to do that, I just took a thick snake of clay and set that down. And then looking at a photo, there's kind of a veiny thing that goes right down the middle of these. So I started out with that, and then after I had that in place so I knew that everything could be symmetrical, I started sculpting out the funky little bubbles almost that are in these intestines. And then to get some definition on that veiny thing, I went back in and carved it out a little bit more so it was a three-dimensional object instead of just this line right down the middle. Now, for a lot of the organs that were separate, I did sculpt them off camera, like this heart. So here you can just see me putting it in place. And then next, I put a big chunk of muscle right across the forehead. I used muscle as kind of a filler almost up here because I didn't want too many little tiny separate organs. And obviously my little heart is not anatomically correct at all, but you get the gist. So to put the muscle in, I just smoothed it in everywhere I wanted it. And then later I went in with those tweezers again to start making those fibery things that are in muscle by just digging it into the clay a little bit and making lines. Not in any pattern, of course, because you want it to look as natural as possible. So another organ that I did sculpt off camera was this nice severed tongue. So here you can see me putting that in place and sticking it right over that muscle so it overlaps and there's no awkward empty space in between. And to get that taste bud texture on the tongue, I just used a spoolie and pushed that into the clay all over the place so it had a rough texture. Next up, I made some teeth right above the eye, which I made by just putting a big chunk of clay right on top and then using my tweezers again to make some holes for the teeth, which I sculpted and added off camera. Next, you can see here I added quite a bit. I added a chunk right next to the nose to be like some liver, and then underneath the eyeball and the little kidney that I'm putting in place right now is just some solid clay that I'm later going to turn into some more brain. I did sculpt quite a bit of these individual organs off camera just because it's kind of hard to show, but I was just looking at reference photos the whole time. None of them are really to scale other than maybe the eyeball, but that's okay. Now onto the paint job. This is where reference photos get really important because you want to make sure the colors are matching the true colors of what these organs would look like, and you have to mix up a lot of your own colors. Obviously they're all kind of different shades of pink and tan, but you want to be mixing them up yourself so they all look the way it would look in a reference photo. So for the brain, I'm just putting in this fleshy pinky orange color. And then after that is all in, I go in on those little cracks and add in a darker tone to round them out a little bit. And if you do look at a photo, this is how brains look anyway, where they get darker in those little crevices. And even though our mask is three-dimensional already, the more definition you add to the crevices, the better it'll look. And onto the intestine, I added a pretty just true pink color all over it. And then going in on the edges to round it out with progressively darker shades of pink. And then down the middle in that vein, I initially thought it would be a darker color because that's what veins are, but it's actually a lighter color, so I eventually go in with a white almost just to redefine that part. And then now to the heart, I made a pretty dark red color and painted the whole thing with that. And this is another one where the reference photo will be really helpful because hearts have a lot of weird lines and textures on them. So I was looking back and forth at a photo the whole time to make sure I had it looking correct. These light parts right here are what I'm talking about. You want to make sure you have all of these weird fatty parts. These are what will help make it look really realistic. Now, I didn't show painting the liver or that other part of the brain because you just follow the same steps for that brain. And then the liver is really just one color. It's kind of a dark purpley color. And then I added an even darker version around the edges to round it out. The muscle, I painted all this one kind of salmony pink color. And then I went in with some darker shades and some lighter shades to get those fibery things in there so it looks nice and realistic. Next up is the tongue, which I painted a nice pink color just over the entire thing. And then just like in all the other things, I went in on the edges and in that middle crevice part with a darker shade of pink. Making sure we get all the way around the edges. I didn't want to leave any white spots. And now for the gory part of the tongue, I just added a darker shade of red, pretty similar to the muscle color, but just adding some nice bloody colors so we can tell that that part is severed. Now on the kidney part, I just, again with the reference photo, making sure everything was the right color. And for the teeth, I painted the gums a nice pink color, and you can see me trying to fill in that crack. Sometimes the Mala Magic does crack, and to remedy that, I honestly just stuck some paint in there, and you can use paint to fill in any holes if you like sort of layer it in there really thick. It'll help you fill gaps like that. In between where I have these missing teeth, I made the holes quite a bit darker because I wanted to show that they were irritated and inflamed, and I also surrounded each tooth with a darker shade of pink just to add some definition. And down here, putting the final touches on the severed parts of the kidney and the eyeball, I just painted the like stalks a pink color and then added a darker red where the actual severed end would be. And parts like this and the severed tongue are where that fake blood is going to come in handy, because in order to make it really look like a severed organ, there would be a lot of blood and it would be really moist looking and kind of gloopy, and so I couldn't get the effect I was looking for with paint, and so I'm really glad that I had that fake blood to go in after the fact and really finish it off. And now for the eye, that can be kind of hard because debatably an eyeball is one of the most recognizable things on this mask, so if it doesn't look realistic, it's just going to be awkward. So I went around the base of it, adding a really watered down red paint to make it as not opaque as possible, and just adding that in light washes around it, and then kind of taking small little tendrils of it to make that veiny texture. And at some point in here my camera died, so I didn't quite catch painting the rest of the eye, but obviously again a reference photo is going to be really important. You can make the iris of the eye whatever color you wanted. I chose a kind of greenish brown color, so you just want to look at a reference photo and make sure you get all of the shadows and all of the different tones of the colors as accurate as possible. So here, guys, is the final look. This is after adding that fake blood and some acrylic glaze to make everything look nice and shiny and wet and gross. And the fake blood is really cool because you just have to melt it in a hot water bath or by microwaving it, and then you can drip it as much as you want. So I kind of went a little ham. It was a lot of fun, but I think the final look, it turned out pretty cool, and I'm really excited to wear it for Halloween.